Good evening, Board President Abeyta, members of the board. No changes on the agenda this evening.
Okay, any changes from the board? Can I have a motion regarding the agenda?
President Abeyta, I move to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Already did it. We're gonna go
Make it
discuss.
an official motion.
Okay, I'm making a motion that we'll move into executive session and we can discuss threatened or pending legislation.
Okay,
Or not legislation, litigation, sorry.
we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. So we'll be in executive session until approximately 5:30.
Are you gonna turn them all on now, or?
Larry wants us to turn. On. Thank you, Neil.
Let him control this. Like I said, how are you? I'm not gonna let you pass these over.
Make sure President Abate is my son.
I'll make sure.
Yeah.
Make sure. Push that button.
We are,
Use your mic.
we are live now. We are hot.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's green, there you go.
Yep, there we go, thank
So
you.
can we turn that off and on or not?
Yes, you can turn it off and on, but.
If I want to talk to her, I don't want everybody.
No,
in
you
the room.
don't.
We want to hear those. I want to hear what you
That's
said.
right.
Feedback was
That's right.
starting.
Okay, I think we're ready to come back into session. Can I have a motion?
I move that we come out of executive session where we discuss threatened or pending litigation.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Item 3, introduction of interpreter.
Para asistencia de traducción en español, la señora Peña te ayudará.
Thank you. So this is a study session. Our first item is a presentation on the facility master plan.
Thank you.
Superintendent.
Yeah, thank you, Board President Abeta, members of the board, those with us in the audience tonight. Taking us through an overview of the facility master plan is our Deputy Superintendent of Operations, Ms. Christy Wagner. Again, this starts the process of the facility master plan, giving you guys kind of a roadmap as to the timeline, what goes into the decisions, what is brought to you for acceptance, and then, of course, whenever you guys approve and accept the recommendations, we will go out to the voters for approval of our general obligation bond, which is November of '25. So with that being said, Deputy Superintendent, please.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Superintendent. So the facility master planning process, how many were around for the approval of the last facility master plan? 3? I think 3. So I'm pretty sure that it's a familiar process to some of us, and it will quickly become familiar. But facility master planning is something that is required by the Public Schools Facility Authority. So it's required that every school district has a roadmap for maintaining, improving, renovating, replacing our facilities. So this document, I always call it a living document, but it acts as a primary document guiding the district planning. So it's our capital planning document. It's our capital planning roadmap. And it roughly syncs up with our general obligation bond, which comes every 4 years. So in this case, we're going into a 5th year because we jumped to November elections. But in 2025, as the superintendent stated, we'll be going out to the voters for another general obligation bond. And as we know, that's the primary funding source for improving our school facilities. It's not the only, but it's the primary. And our bond advisor has told us that we qualify to go out for $140 million in this bond cycle. So what we're doing in the year leading up to the bond is creating the roadmap. Okay, so I'm just going to talk over a couple of slides around what is a facility master plan, what is your role in it, who's a part of it. But ultimately, as I mentioned, it's a required state document, so it has some standard forms and some standard processes. But it's a great process, and it gives us really good information with details of what every one of our schools and facilities in the district needs, from small repairs and adjustments to major improvements. So it's a very detailed document. I think it's hundreds and hundreds of pages long, and at least 10 binders sit on my bookshelf because I still like paper sometimes. So each facility is scored based on a ranking system that the state provides to us. We don't make up the evaluative tool, and we don't make up the ranking process. That's standardized across districts across New Mexico. So we're using a standard process to create a document that tells us everything we need to know about our facilities, and we're ranking them using a standard rubric. But what the school district does then is we take this information, and between staff and your community review committee and the board, we set priorities for the next bond. Okay, so parts of the process are really standard. We're coming and we're reporting facts and information. And then the big lift, the heavy lift, is taking the staff recommendations and the CRC recommendations and the board and the superintendent's recommendations and wrapping that all up into a set of prioritized projects preceding our next general obligation bond. So you all have a committee, your community review committee. You appoint 2 people per board member, and then we have a representative from NEA, and then 2 board members sit on this committee as well. I staff the committee along with Gabe Romero, our executive director of operations. And this committee is assigned the job of reviewing the facility master plan process and the implementation of the general obligation bond. So they're really your oversight committee. They prioritize the capital projects based on the district goals. So one thing the superintendent and I will want to be able to bring to your committee is some thoughts you have about your priorities when it comes to syncing up our educational goals with our facility needs. Okay? The Community Review Committee will recommend to the board on specific issues related to the facility master plan and the general obligation bond. They'll actually put together the facility master plan priorities based on working with staff and bring those to you in hopes that you too will see those as the district priorities. They review the capital project implementation throughout the entire bond cycle. So anyone who has your appointed person on the committee, you can talk to them about the 2020 or 2021 general obligation bond. The last bond cycle we're currently executing, they're overseeing that. They're making sure that we're following the roadmap. They're making sure that we're telling you when we make adjustments to the roadmap, whether it's adding to a project, postponing a project, whatever it is. You hear about those in the board meetings, right? So the Board of Education, you're a guide to the FMP in terms of, syncing up your big picture priorities around facilities, right? That's one of your purviews is facilities. And so your priorities around facilities and syncing those up with the superintendent's priorities around educational programming and talking with us a little bit about, where you see our priority needs. Not wants, not, sort of what do your schools or constituents wish for, but really what is the strategic vision around facilities supporting the academic gains of the district, okay? And we always, in the facility master plan, make sure to meet basic needs. Health, safety, ADA, aging systems. So your role really comes in the strategic part of if we have $400 million in need and we only have $140 million, what are your highest priorities for the superintendent and your committee to be thinking about? That's really what we'd want to hear from you. And of course, you approve the projects when they come to the boardroom. So when we bring the facilities master plan to PSFA, we have documentation that it was approved by the Board of Education. You've approved the roadmap for the state, and then your committee is helping hold the district accountable for executing that plan over the next 4 to 5 years. So you do get recommendations from the committee. We do want to hear from you. It's a discussion process. There's feedback, there's dialogue, and we look forward to hopefully keeping you so up to date on the facility master plan that by the time we bring the final plan to you for approval, you have a level of familiarity with it and confidence that that's not a hard decision for you. So we wouldn't come to you just on the night of approval. We want you to be a part of the process. So the general obligation bonds, you approve the sale of the bonds, you approve us even going out to the voters for the election, right? So you will bring a resolution to you that you approve going out for the election next November, and then you approve the bond sales over the process of executing the bond. As we've mentioned more than once, November 2020 2025 is our target. So this work really needs to be wrapped up by spring of 2025. So we have a really concrete idea of what we're messaging to the public around the election. We are very fortunate in Santa Fe to have an extremely high level of voter support for our capital elections. Extremely high. It's why we have such a successful capital improvement program and why you see such amazing facilities in our school district. We have not, in my tenure, this is my 14th year overseeing the facility master plan, we have not raised taxes through these processes at any time. Do people's taxes go up? If assessed home values go up, it's proportionate to that. Or if you upgrade your property, you buy a more expensive property. So as a taxpayer, your taxes might change over the lifetime of home ownership, but we are not asking anyone to increase their taxes to support our work. I think that the next slide is really the timeline. I already talked about this. The process involves information gathering at the school sites, at the community level, at the facilities level. We're interviewing custodians, maintenance staff. We have consultants on board. We're looking at sustainability measures. We're looking at athletics facilities. We're looking at educational facilities. There'll be interviews of the academic team. There'll be an interview of the superintendent. There'll be interviews of the special education director and every principal in the school district. So a lot of people contribute to the information gathering. It's not just a checklist, walking around the school district and looking at facilities. It's really talking to people. So that's why the timeline stretches out so long. So we're on the update, assess, and identify. We'll begin bringing reports in October to the Community Review Committee of the facility conditions, and that's where we'll start, is looking at what is the condition of our facilities, what is the current state. And then we'll move into dialogue around, well, given the current state and all the needs and our ability to bond for $140 million, what are we going to do with it? Okay, so what are we going to do with it? And so we're here, I think, for any general feedback tonight, questions or guidance you have for the superintendent for future presentations. We just wanted to let you know that we're hard at work initiating this process. We invite you to be a part of it, and I'm sure your liaisons to the committee will talk about this in board updates, in board meetings as well. Superintendent, anything else?
No, and thank you for that presentation and overview. Something we've talked about, and I think I've talked about to you guys when we're going through this process. Ideas are welcomed. I have some of my own, especially when we talk about the state asking every district to right-size their district, and maybe we start right-sizing or the discussion the district level. We operate 4 or 5 multiple buildings at the district level, and we're spread out across town, so that could be something that I present and discuss with you guys in the facility team. So again, just want to say this is the start of the process, and we'll continue to work and keep you guys informed.
Vice President Noble, I'm going to excuse myself for the rest of the meeting if you can take over. Thank you.
Vice President Noble.
Go ahead, Board Member Bozay.
Thank you. I just want to confirm the dates on the timeline. Like, this process has been underway
Correct.
for the past year as
Correct.
far as the interviewing and the looking at the properties and whatnot.
Correct. So we'll be bringing the information gathering is happening right now. It was initiated last school year, including the walkthroughs of the facilities, interviewing the respective parties, bringing in consultants to look at different aspects of the facilities. So the reports are being generated and will be presented in a very succinct manner to the Community Review Committee beginning in October. And that usually takes 3 to 4 meetings before we go through the bulk of what we've discovered around facility need. And so that process will happen into, I think, the new calendar year. And then the prioritization discussions with the Community Review Committee will begin in the new calendar year. Okay, so we really have, right now, we're still in facts. We're still in facts and information. We've gathered a lot of it, and we need to start packaging it so we can present it to the committee to do the work of prioritizing.
Thank you. And then I also just wanted to kind of bring together two things that you said to make sure that it's very clear for all the millions watching at home that while we have increased bonding capacity to get $140 million, that is at no increase to taxes for the residents.
Right, and so ultimately, our bond advisor tells us what our bonding capacity is. And it's gone up and down through the last several bond cycles. I've seen it as high as 130. I've seen it as low as 100 million. Okay, so our bond advisor at our last bond presentation told us that we had a bonding capacity of $140 million. And that is the capacity at which we would not have to increase taxes to our voters. Ultimately, the Board of Education will vote on a resolution, what we're putting out to the voters. And so that's a part of the decision-making process, and it'll happen, I believe, our legal counsel can remind me, but sometime in the new calendar year preceding the election, we'll bring forward a resolution, and at that point in time, we'll either declare that we're going out for a $140 million bond or a different dollar amount that's lower, depending on what the board decides. But you're a part of that decision-making process. We just know that's our capacity without raising taxes. Yes.
And something I just want to add, and kind of ask a question for you to think about. 5 years ago, you buy a house for $200,000. Can you buy the same house for $200,000 in today's market? My point is, construction costs are escalating. They continue to escalate. So $100 million 5 years ago, 4 years ago, probably provides half the number of projects, current day time and prices, right? So just something to think about. Because we're seeing, what, $550 per square foot roughly?
Correct.
For construction costs for schools.
Yeah, no, I mean, the members that sit on the CRC are fully aware of how much the construction costs have gone up. It's quite shocking.
There's a delay, I think. So I appreciate this, and it's amazing how these things seem like they have a long timeline, and then they don't. Never, ever do. I do think, and I know well, let me phrase this as a question. The macro statistics and enrollment projections, demography, when does all of that come in? Because not only are we looking at cost escalation in construction, we haven't even started talking about tariffs yet, but we are facing significant demographic changes, some of which are reflected in our prices and our bonding capacity, but that also is affected in who can buy homes in the area, et cetera, et cetera. And Christy, I know you're familiar with these maps, but again, the question is sort of when is all of that brought into the process?
It's a really good point, and I kind of glossed over the top of that. So the facility master plan not only includes a thorough analysis of every facility, but an analysis of district program, of the city demographics, of our student demographics, in our enrollment projections. We've been using a demographer for those projections, and I think this time around it's a requirement of the facility master plan for PSFA that we do this. But we'll be working much closer with our own student data office to shore up that information and look at those nuances. But it's meant to paint a big picture of the overall enrollment trends for the district. It's meant to paint the picture of even just some trends in housing, in the economy. So when you get the facility master plan report, it's going to really give you some general information about where the district and the community are at, where construction is at, and how some of those factors play into decisions you might want to make around facilities. So it's not, the facility reports don't live in isolation. They should reflect things you're hearing in your day-to-day life about educational programming, issues you're hearing about enrollment, issues you're hearing about initiatives.
And when do we see that report? When does that come to us?
The complete report comes to the board in its final form. It's usually an executive summary.
Mm-hmm.
It's a less than 40-page document that's in narrative form, and it has sections including these things you've inquired about. You can certainly see drafts of the report at any point in time. We can do quarterly updates on the process. We can chunk it out, whatever the superintendent prefers. We don't have to come with the whole thing all at once.
When is the final thing?
I would predict spring.
Okay.
Which
is also, I heard you say,
Yeah,
we want to be wrapped up by spring so we
predicting-
can move on to.
Yeah, I think that I told Mr. Romero it would be great if we had the facility master plan approved and adopted before May.
Mm-hmm.
When we're all moving into budget and graduation, other things are moving, and we're moving into budget now. But I'm saying,
So in thinking about that, and this is sort of moving to a request of you, Superintendent, I'm happy to help, and of our board president, is basically it would be wonderful to have maybe some more frequent updates, some information, discussion ahead of that. And of course, your thoughts and the team's thoughts, as well as the CRC, of sort of what, I think Christy said it really well, but it's like the strategic vision and how that needs to play with the facilities. I'm also aware we passed a new policy as to how this works that increases the board's responsibility to sort of give information and provide some of that strategic direction. And big picture priorities was the other thing Christy said that I liked, as to what those are. So, we have a new policy that ideally we use and do this in an intentional way. It's always been done, but with the factors that we're seeing, all of the professional information that is brought forward. And then I appreciate the point of using the student data office better, because I think, Superintendent, correct me if I'm wrong, you and I had this conversation, but a lot of that housing that went up near El Camino Real is not generating students at the same rate that we might have typically thought the math would add up to. Mm-hmm. So, understanding some things, and I think they were very clear that they were marketing that housing to professionals who might be commuting to Los Alamos National Labs and that sort of thing. So understanding the particulars of our data does feel very important. But the other piece that I would say is, the layer of the reimagining work that we've been doing, obviously led by Dr. Veronica Garcia. The look at middle schools, I would love, I think, with the student data office, that's another piece of when and where enrollment drops off. If we continue to see that, obviously we hope to reinvigorate some of the middle school stuff, but ultimately charting out in the spring some intentional conversations, some of the other conversations, innovation schools, and how, again, that sort of reimagining layer might help inform some of the big picture priorities and the strategic vision for academic achievement and really the long-term thing of the Santa Fe Public Schools. We have done some work to update our strategic plan, but this is maybe a time for us to, again, sort of layer some of these things together and be very intentional ahead of asking our community to approve these bonds, assuming that's the way we want to go. So I appreciate the early conversations and information, and I do think if we do this well and are efficient in some of our weaving together of strategic and reimagining work, it will look a lot like some really intentional discussions in the new year.
Vice President Noble, I just want to really amplify that. I think it couldn't be more importantly stated that, like, we need to look at the demographic data and the reimagining data to inform our priorities and align that with, you know, updated strategic plan. And also just to be mindful that spring gets busy with budget stuff, and so let's, you know, the long project that all of a sudden is short. Let's make sure we leave adequate time to do this in a meaningful way.
And Vice President Noble, I would also like to concur with what she just said. And I look at the demographics every day as I drive out to the community college and see all that development that's going on at Richards and Governor Miles area, and wondering if that new community is producing students for us or not. And so is my understanding that we are able to get that kind of projection of that kind of data?
So, and I can ask Christy to answer because she knows this better than I do, but ultimately I would weigh in and say the short answer is yes. And there's a lot of expertise, and the demographers can provide a lot of things. To be very plain about my concern, I think the underlying assumptions of some of the demographic work are changing, and I am concerned that the projections of even those experts are not as good as they used to be.
Yeah.
I think that I would say that the predictive model that once worked, you know, 2 bond cycles ago, doesn't work in this economic climate when entry-level housing is $500,000 and we're serving more of a commuter community than we ever have before. And so while our demographer that works as a part of the facility master planning team adds value in that they've been doing master planning for a long time, we're in a different time, and we need to look at it with a more critical lens.
Right. And that's something that we've been working on internally. We see the projections, we see what the experts are telling us, but when it comes down to real data, that picture is a little different. And so to Vice President Noble's point, that apartment complex, if I remember correctly, only produced 1 student at this time. And it's completely filled, right? So again, even though there's projections saying it or showing, the real numbers tell a different story. So that's where we've gone back and forth and really talked about how can we look at this differently with our own data and really make informed choices by using both, leveraging both.
Thank you, Superintendent. I think that's very well said. I might even suggest, you know, that before the end of the year, and this can be for your consideration and you know, the President's consideration as well. But even before the end of the calendar year, that we think about a schedule for the spring. Because those meetings are going to get filled real fast with budgets and whatnot. And, you know, with the professional team that's supporting us on this, you know, what's possible, what's workable, and then looking at, you know, if we need to do a study session with any of the folks still engaged in reimagining, you know, whatnot, because it does seem there's a lot here that ideally we would pull out in terms of strategic and big picture goals. So, yeah.
I do want to say too that, you know, not to worry, because the roadmap sort of creates itself based on where we already are and what we've already begun, committed to, know we have to do. So in the grand scheme of things, $140 million and, you know, several $100 million in facility need won't match up. And we could really agonize for a long time about how will we ever prioritize that. Well, we've been doing this for a long time, and large buckets of money have to go to the maintenance and well-being of our facilities. And that's really not a hard decision to make, to know that you need to put buckets of money towards roofs and HVAC systems and parking and paving and drainage. The board has already committed to the rebuild of E.J. Martinez. That will be a large bucket of money. Okay, we always have a sustainability package, and we always have, there are certain packages that we always have. So when really push comes to shove, the big decisions will be around how much money and effort is put into some of our aged facilities. Where are they in the discussion? Because we do have aged facilities that will need as much of a rebuild as EJ. And how much of the work do we continue at some of our secondary schools where we've already put a concerted effort? So, the decision-making pot will get smaller and smaller and smaller as we get through all the things that we already know we have to do.
And I just want to make note, we're very fortunate that our community and those who vote have approved the bonds. As we return from remote learning, because of the approval of these bonds and the updated systems, we were able to help mitigate the spread of COVID and return to in-person learning. So even though we tend to forget about everything it took, we have to remind ourselves, because of these types of bonds and the facility master plan and the teams, we were able to come into a well-prepared school district for students to return from remote learning.
Thank you. I appreciate that a lot. And I do think, to be clear, I think it's like maybe 3 meetings in the spring for us to consider, which, would be, and again, given that it's probably time for us to update a strategic plan, I don't think we need to do an arduous and theoretical process of that. But I think that this could almost be some of that, again, with reimagining as we sort of weave these things together. And that, might even be a helpful thing to talk about is the priorities, and especially with Ms. Yonder Wagner and Mr. Romero and people who have done this for a long time, that it's like health and safety always goes at the top, right? And aging facilities and their sort of layers, because it does become, I think, very clearly less complicated as you walk through it. And, but I would love to get us to, if we have the ability, some, strategic decisions around, what you pointed to, Superintendent. I do think we've are maybe getting to a point where we need to think about our administration, the efficiency of these various different places that we have, the rent that we pay still in some, that sort of thing, as well as, again, the innovation schools, E.J. Martinez, and, the continuing projects, because let's face it, it is only responsible, not to mention good thinking, to continue many of the projects the district has committed to. So just going through that, and again, making sure, and I know that Board Member Bose has thought about this and can help, but that we are intentional with our Community Review Committee and doing what, the board has committed in terms of providing some of that strategy and vision.
Thank you for my continuing education.
You can probably flip to here.
Okay, anything
Thank
more
you.
on this? Shall we
Thank you
move
very
on?
much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, we're moving on to our second presentation, Artificial Intelligence Overview.
Thank you, Vice President Noble, members of the board. With us tonight will be Vanessa Romero, Deputy Superintendent, Dr. Neil Weaver, Chief Information and Strategy Officer, and also Gary Lewis, Director of Learning, Digital Learning. So taking you guys through an overview tonight is going to lead us, as we were talking about roadmaps and timelines, on what we're doing around AI. This is something that's being talked about at the state level. This is something that districts are exploring. Nobody has really taken the lead as of yet. I think we're in a very fortunate position with experts here at the table to really be kind of front and center of all of this work around the state, maybe even nationwide. So I know Dr. Weaver will go through this a little bit in his presentation, but this is ongoing efforts. This is something that we'll bring back to the board because it's going to have to be a living document. AI technology continues to change. So if we set a really specific policy, it could box us in, right? So again, just trying to put framework around this and where we're going to move forward, because from when we started this project here at the district, things have already changed, and that has only been 2 or 3 months into this training. So again, just trying to give you guys an opportunity to ask questions, give you a roadmap of where we're going around AI. And again, the experts at the table, I think, puts us in a very unique position. So, Dr. Weaver.
Thank you. Seems like forever ago when Dr. Gonzalez asked for, I think your words were, what are we doing about AI? And so it's here, absolutely. It was here then, and it's still here. So we're excited to be here and with you tonight to just talk about what the school district is doing and what we look forward to doing over the next couple of years. So our agenda for tonight is just an overview of what artificial intelligence is, looking at it from an impact on our daily life in industry and the workplace. And then we really want to focus on the potential impacts on education, and then what Santa Fe Public Schools is doing to close that out. I'm going to introduce Mr. Gary Lewis, who is my Director of Digital Learning. He is not new to the district, but he's semi-new to this position. He's not been in front of the board before. So, Mr. Lewis, I'll ask you to introduce yourself real quick.
All right, good evening, and thank you for having us in this evening. I'm Gary Lewis. I started as a digital learning coach. My first year, I was at Nye, Chaparral, and Santa Fe High School. My second year, I was at ECO, Desert Sage, and Santa Fe High School. And then I ended up as Director of Digital Learning. So glad to be here. I have spent 39 years in public education, retired out of Kansas, and moved to Santa Fe. So thank you for having me here, and I've enjoyed my time in Santa Fe. So we talk about artificial intelligence and what it is. It's really interesting because even today, before I came over here, I was studying the hurricane in Florida, right? And artificial intelligence forecasted the path of the hurricane better than the models, the European model and the American model. The European model and the American model, you'll remember that they are focused on physics. So humans and physics and what happens, where the artificial intelligence model was focused on a collection of data. And for the last 2 hurricanes, it has better forecasted the track of the hurricane than the human models. So artificial intelligence is here, and it has been here. We've used artificial intelligence for years in our education systems. So when we talk about schools, anytime we use a search engine, we're using artificial intelligence, okay? So anything that can be done with a computer or a machine that usually required human intelligence, that is what artificial intelligence is, okay? And so, and we talk about different things that happen. We're going to talk tonight about some of the tools that we use in the school district that already are implementing artificial intelligence. Vanessa will share the Amera product with us and what we've learned from that as we've been using that product in the district. So our next slide is what is generative artificial intelligence? Because now we've moved into this area where we look at artificial intelligence to create for us. So when we talk about generative artificial intelligence, we talk about how does it generate, right? It generates images. We can have artificial intelligence create art for us. We can have it create images. We can have it create songs videos, codes. And so when we talk about generative artificial intelligence, it's creating something. And I'll talk in a little while about a program, a pilot program that we're going to institute starting this Saturday, and what we're going to be doing with that in our school district. Okay?
Mr. Lewis, just real quick before you move on to the slide, if I remember through our training, those images were created through AI, correct?
I'm sorry, I should have said that to you. These are images that were created through Bing Chat, Microsoft, in October. And so you can see this art, these images were created using artificial intelligence. Yep. Okay, so we talk about the impacts on daily life and industry, and I can talk to you a little bit about what's happened to me even this week. So on Tuesday this week, I went in to Christus St. Vincent to have an ultrasound on my kidneys, right? And before I could even get out of the parking lot, in my chart, I had a report of what the ultrasound. It was fine. I'm okay, but before I got out of the parking lot, I already had a report. So how did I get that? So you still had a human who did the ultrasound, right? And she told me what she was doing. At the same time she was doing the ultrasound, it was already going out to artificial intelligence for review, right? So the artificial intelligence system, they've trained it. They use a lot in radiology for broken bones and so forth. But it had already read what was going on with that ultrasound. So that all they had to do was turn it over to a radiologist. The technician turned it over, then it went to a radiologist. The radiologist said, yeah, I agree with what the report says. And so immediately I had a report in my chart. So that's the healthcare industry is using artificial intelligence to give it immediate feedback on what's happening. Manufacturing, my parents were both managers in the aircraft industry and back in Wichita, Kansas, and they were at Beechcraft, then became Raytheon. And on the line, humans used to build the aircraft, right? And round clock, 3 shifts, they would build aircrafts. But today, what happens is robots are building the aircraft that the human used to do. Now, that didn't necessarily replace the humans because humans still have to train the systems and they still have to inspect the systems to make sure it's done correctly because you want the plane to fly correctly, right? So, but that's how the manufacturing process is being changed, not just in aircraft, but in any manufacturing process. And then I have a cousin who is a wheat farmer back in Kansas, northern Kansas, and he has combines. All right, it's amazing to watch what he does because literally all he does is get in and he pushes a button in his combines. And the combines, through artificial intelligence, have mapped the fields, totally mapped it, every inch of it. And so when he pushes the button, the combine knows to start going through the field the way it's supposed to go through, and when it feels the bin, it remotely calls a truck, and the truck comes and picks the wheat up. It's just all automatic. But it's through that technology that it has enabled him to focus on other things. And we have all kinds of stories. I mean, this is just an example, a small example of how artificial intelligence is being used in our world. And you all have been using it. You maybe haven't realized it, but you've been using it, artificial intelligence, and what we do. So, but that's an example, and those are 3 examples that touch my life that I already know I relate to. Okay? Next.
So part of the problem that we have in our training that we had and something that came out of that training.
So every year, our previous union president and I would always go back and forth on trainings that are required by employees. He kept saying, well, is it required? Is it not required? So I went to our HR director, and we'll get into how she used it and why she used it a little later, because it's part of our roadmap. So I asked, our HR director, can you provide me a list of trainings required by our employees and cite the state statute? Well, I was brought, I think, a 3 or 4 page list. And I said, some of them look like they repeat one another, and are you sure it's required? Is it current law? So she said, well, let me go back and check. I think the next day she came back, and you'll see the response that was given. She went in after a training that we went through, used AI, and prompted it to find whether or not the current ones, trainings that were required of teachers, are actually current, and what is current. So she went in, added a prompt, and it spit out this. It stated the requirement, the statute, a brief description. So by using AI, we have condensed and consolidated a number of documents into 2 pages. And these 2 pages are required by the state of New Mexico each and every year. So again, they even gave additional consideration, references. So this eliminated 2-3 days worth of work into 10 minutes, potentially. So it shows the benefits. Again, you need to understand, and Dr. Weaver will get into it, the prompts used to generate a product like this. Something that's not on here that I just recalled as I was listening, as we're going through the trainings as a district staff, and I hope I'm not jumping the gun, but Dr. Weaver asked one of the AI applications to create an image of himself using Van Gogh techniques, and it spit it out. It was amazing. I mean, again, it's a great way to use technology, AI, but also it's not going to be, our roadmap is not going to be punitive. It's going to be guidance for teachers to be able to use it with their students to drive instruction. So we want to make sure everybody understands that's what we're trying to get our students and our staff to understand.
And
Excuse me, sorry to jump in. I just got a text message from one of our many watchers at home saying that the sound cut out about 4 minutes ago. So.
thank you. So Superintendent Chavez talked about prompts and how important the prompts are. If you look on the right side of the previous slide, the prompt that our HR director used was, I'm an HR director for Santa Fe Public Schools. What new hire mandatory trainings are New Mexico Public Schools required to provide? According to what statute? And what annual trainings are New Mexico Public Schools required to provide? Again, here's the list that came out. What's important to understand, and what we will help our teachers and our students understand, is that AI is intended to be a thought partner. It's not intended that we see this document and we believe, okay, it's for sure the correct document. We have to do our fact checking and make sure that the information that was provided was correct.
So we talk about the impacts of artificial intelligence on education. This comes from Teach AI, which we use as a resource when we are providing professional development to all of our stakeholder groups. But when we look at the impacts on AI in education, I think if we look at the bolded words here, differentiation, already in our school district, we are using AI to differentiate instruction for our students. Assessment. We're getting better at looking at how we assess students. I'm not talking about state assessment. I'm talking about how do we assess students day in and day out in what we're doing. So we need to make sure that we continue to look at AI and its relationship to assessment and what we're using in our classrooms. Personalized instruction. We love personalized instruction. It's so necessary, it's so needed. So we personalize the instruction we're providing for kids. Artificial intelligence technology allows us to do that. Skill development, creativity, collaboration. I use a tool called eduaid.ai, and I can go in and I can put a standard in, and I can and tell it I want a creative lesson plan for that standard, and it will pull a lesson for me. Of course, I as a human have to review it and make sure that it's appropriate for the students that I'm teaching. Collaboration, same way. I can use that tool to create collaborative tools to engage students in the writing process, collaboration with each other, podcasting, so forth. So we use it for collaboration, skill development. And then, of course, efficiency. We want our teachers to be able to use artificial intelligence to enhance their teacher productivity, to make it more efficient for them, their work, and to give them the tools that they need to be successful in the classroom. Next, starting this Saturday, you need to be aware that we are starting a Chat for Schools pilot. And this is for secondary educators is who we're starting with. And this will go from this Saturday through December. And we actually have 12 secondary teachers that will be coming in with us on Saturday. And what we're going to be doing is we're looking at Chat for Schools, and it's a safe space for us to use. So in other words, it keeps track of every conversation that we have and interact with the artificial intelligence so we can see it, the teachers can see it. Whereas if you were to use like Chat for School, for example, or Chat GPT, it would just, you wouldn't necessarily know what every student was typing. This way, we know what every prompt that's going in the system is. We can see it. And then the other thing is, we're going to be creating customized tutors with these teachers over the semester. And the customized tutors the teachers will be able to assign those tutors to different groups of students. And they're not there to provide the answers, but they're there to provide the guidance. So that when students are outside of the classroom, or inside the classroom, I suppose, they can use the tutor to better what's going on to meet their needs, educational needs. So especially we think about using the tutors when we go home in the evenings and we need bilingual support. We can use the tutor to help us do that. And it's immediate, okay? So we need to teach students to access those tutors as well. But the teachers will be building the tutors using artificial intelligence. And so anyway, that'll start this Saturday. We kick it off. And then in December, we'll have a showcase, and we'll make sure you know about it so you can come and see what we've been doing with our teachers and students using Chat for Schools. We also, on October 10th, we will be meeting with the principals and the assistant principals. We'll be providing a 2-hour artificial intelligence professional development session for them. And we've been doing this constantly, so this isn't new. We've met with the principals before, but we're really giving them that 2-hour space so that we can empower them to be the best leaders that they can be in their education systems. We also have met with our district leaders this summer. We spent a lot of time with them working on developing our guidance for artificial intelligence in our school district. Okay.
So now I'm going to talk about Amira, which is an AI tutoring program. It's a reading assistant for our kids. It was purchased part of our adopted curriculum 2 years ago. And it provides one-on-one tutoring to students as they read orally. And this Amira will pop up and provide micro interventions on a kid's reading, from phonics to phonemic awareness to fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. And so just reflecting back on when I was a teacher, as a teacher, I'd sit with the kid and write down all the errors as they read, and that was called a running record. And it takes hours, right, to get through a class of 20. This records the kid's reading, identifies all the errors in the reading, and produces reports for teachers. So then teachers can look and say, you know what, this kid is struggling with phonics, their sight words. I'm going to pull them and have a small group and just focus on that skill. So it's saving teachers hours of time. So it's informing their instruction, but it's also assessing their reading. And I thought it would be great for you guys to see it in action versus me talking about it. So on the next slide, we visited Sweeney Elementary, and the principal talks about how she's implemented the reading program school-wide. But then we also go to a classroom so so that the teacher could talk about the program and how she's utilizing it to drive her instruction. I hope it works.
As a teacher, Amira helps me with having data, of course, that I need for having a better instruction in my class, and also helps me with helping students in understanding what are those reading or comprehension gaps they have, and helps me to actually identify what is the problem exactly and practice a little bit more. So those students that I have, for example, in red levels, I encourage the families to use a mirror at home as well, so they can improve those scores from red to yellow and then to green, which is ultimately the focus that we have in the district.
About halfway through last year, when we learned more about Amira, one of the expectations I set for my staff was just to try and use Amira at least 15 minutes a day, and to really utilize it during the small group intervention time with students. Many of my teachers are using it during small group, but often I'll go in and sometimes it's the whole class is using it.
It's helping them to understand where they are having an issue when reading. Like, for example, some words, they have to repeat those words and do it better each time, because, for example, sometimes it's the pronunciation in which they have a problem. So they have to repeat it and then do it better.
I think it really helps students, first of all, just want to read. It's exciting to have this little AI person pop up and give them some like, hey, let's practice this word. We noticed you missed this. So I think it makes reading exciting again for some students.
Some of the words, phrases they use are part of the things that they see in the modules that we work on along the book. So it's part of building a vocabulary. I have some students that after a practice, they say, they asked me this word, and I don't know what it was about. So we talk about it, and then that's building more vocabulary for them.
What's great about the platform is because as they're reading aloud, it's recording them, and then it notices or recognizes the misses that students have, so it can drill down to that phonemic awareness need or fluency need or phonics pieces that a child might be missing. And so it does that within the platform automatically, and then the teacher can go in and find even more lessons to help guide to those specific needs of the student. I think it's great Sweeney is showing that we're using Amira a lot, and the expectation is to really use it for our students of the highest need at that layer 3 level of our MLSS tiers, which is great. But for Sweeney Elementary, because many of our students do need help with reading, it's been wonderful to use school-wide with all of our students in grades K through 5, because we really just want to bring back the love of reading, and this helps our teachers really get those detailed needs of our students. And so I just see Sweeney doing great things.
And I do want to add that these recordings create a profile of students, and so teachers then send parents these profiles from the beginning of the years, and parents can see the growth along the way. So it's really wonderful. And next week we have our new Secretary of Education that wanted to come and see how we're implementing Amira, so we're taking her to a few of our schools that are using it super successfully and have a system in place, so that happens next week.
Vanessa, is this English only?
It's English and Spanish, so.
It's English and Spanish.
Our dual language schools, based on their curriculum alignment plan, if they're 50-50 or 80-20, they would introduce, like some weeks their Amira reading would only be in English, and then the following week it would be in Spanish or with shortened amounts of time. I do want to add, the research behind it says that if you spend 15 minutes or 30 minutes a week, kids are experiencing like 2 years of growth.
Right. And when you said they can take this and work on it at home, do they need the headset? Or
I
can
don't
they,
think they need the
are they
they're
just
wearing
talking to
the
their own
headsets
Chromebook?
in the classroom, because everybody's, if you're using it in the classroom, everybody's
Okay.
using it at once.
Okay, great, thank you. Mhm. Excellent.
Our video
Nice
worked
tune.
the second time around. So now we're going to shift our focus to what Santa Fe Public Schools is doing and has been doing and what we're looking at doing in the future. The first thing I'll tell you that we're really good at is borrowing what others have already done and looking at best practices. We look at COSIN, the Consortium for School Networking, ISTE, which is the International Society for Technology and Education. Teach AI has provided us with some wonderful resources as well. But these 7 principles we got from the Teach AI organization, and these are kind of the principles that we are looking at as we roll out. As we roll out artificial intelligence, and just making sure that we're thinking about evaluation, integrity, purpose, compliance, and each of these 7 principles. From a technology perspective, we have undergone a good deal of training. So myself and my executive director of technology services have both been certified in AI strategy through a Cornell University project. All of the digital learning coaches have gone through a Google for Educators, AI for Educators certification process, and we have others in the department who are also working through specific education AI certifications and courses. We have been developing guidance for our teachers, recommendations for how teachers should and should not use, and students should and should not be using artificial intelligence, and we'll get into some of those documents in a minute. The superintendent and deputy superintendent Romero were gracious enough to allow us 2 days, 2 full days over the summer to work with cabinet and our instructional cabinet around what is artificial intelligence. How is it impacting our lives? How is it impacting education? As Mr. Lewis stated, we started to make decisions as a group around how we would use and leverage AI as a best practice to support teaching and learning within Santa Fe Public Schools. We went through prompt engineering. We looked at applications that we're already using. We looked at applications that we might be using. We talked about Chat for Schools, which Mr. Lewis talked about, and ultimately decided that we would pilot that moving into this school year. We're looking at, with that group, we were looking at, here is our first draft of the guidance. You guys will see that guidance in a minute. And as a group, we went through that and decided that that is our guidance moving forward. Again, this is a living document, and I can guarantee you it will change as this field is changing so quickly.
I just wanted to add, one of the reasons why I thought it was important for district staff to go through this training first. I didn't want it to look like it was top down and we were forcing our educators to comply with some of this guidance or recommendations. Plus, how could we as district leaders provide support and help to our sites if we didn't go through the training? So again, I didn't think it was fair for our sites to ask us for guidance and assistance if we didn't go through the training as well. I did participate for both full days as well. I know we all learned a lot, but also I think it builds a lot of community within the district and helps answer questions, and we talk a unified language.
So moving into our next 2 slides, we're actually going to look at some of the documents that we did create. The document in front of you is it's actually a 2-page document. It's our generative AI quick guide for teachers. It has an AI acceptable use scale, which I'll talk about in just a minute. It talks about prohibited uses, and it gives links to AI feedback space for our teachers to be able to provide feedback around artificial intelligence. What I really want to draw your attention to on the next slide is this acceptable use scale, which was adapted from the North Carolina Department of Instruction. They put out a 50 or 60-page guide for all of their districts about the use of AI. So this is a tool that students and teachers can use so that they can understand when and how artificial intelligence can be used within the classroom on a scale of 0 to 4. So essentially 0 means as a student, you will not use artificial intelligence for any part of your assignment. And it goes on 1, 2, 3. 4 is full use of AI with human oversight. Now, a big part of that is that we have to help ourselves and our students understand the responsible use of artificial intelligence so that we're not just going out to the internet or AI to have it do our work for us, but again, we use it as a thought partner to help us develop the learning that we're working through, to help us maybe provide guidance for our writing, to provide grammatical or spelling recommendations and different things like that. So this is a document that has been released to our teachers. Our digital learning coaches are in the schools every single day. This is not something that we're going to provide to teachers and then just go away. We are there to support and to help as we move through this next 2 years of adoption to help everyone understand the best ways to use it. The next thing I'm going to share with you on the next slide is the first of our 2 year roadmap. We're covering 4 primary areas here: stakeholder engagement, our training and professional development, the strategy that we're looking at and planning around AI, and then a big part of this is the external collaboration that I've talked about already. Back to stakeholder engagement, Catherine Grunewald, who is our innovation coordinator, her role is currently focusing primarily on artificial intelligence. She's putting stakeholder groups together, and when I say stakeholders, I'm talking about parents, community, students, teachers, administrators, business members. So we're looking for feedback, we're looking for input. We want to make sure that all of our stakeholders understand what it is that Santa Fe Public Schools is doing and have a voice that will be listened to. You can see a Board of Education study session is there, and then we're hoping for regular updates as well. Around training and professional development, we already talked about the 2-day cabinet and instructional cabinet training. I believe we're the only district in the state of New Mexico, and likely one of very few in the country who have given up 2 days of cabinet time, which, as we know, is incredibly valuable, but also very important. So we thank the superintendent for that. We are, as Mr. Lewis indicated, we're in front of principals coming up in 2 weeks for 2 hours. That will just be one of many continued sessions in front of principals. And then again, from the principals, it feeds down to being in front of teachers with the digital learning coaches present to help our teachers understand what this means. I want to talk about external collaboration very quickly. We have 4 things listed here. The New Mexico TIE, the Technology and Education Conference. We have 2 or 3 presentations that we have provided and hope to give. One from a district level, one maybe more from a school level, and then one from a student level. We'll be involved with the Lano STEAM Day at the Roundhouse like we are every year. It's very exciting, condensed version, packed into that little bit of space around STEAM. And then we'll have an AI Literacy Day showcase coming up towards the end of the school year. And then we will also print our digital learning coaches frequently, I'd say about 5 or 6 of them every year, present at the New Mexico Digital Learning Conference, and I don't see why that would be any different this year. And so to take us home with this, I'm going to turn us back over to Deputy Superintendent Romero to intro a picture of what AI could be used for.
So Khan Academy
OpenAI invited my...
Khan Academy has also created an in implementing this in the classroom, especially at secondary. How do you support secondary teachers to utilize this for independent practice or to provide more guided practice in the classroom? And it's just a great tool that students can even take home if they're needing help in Algebra 1. The neat thing is it just provides prompts. It doesn't give the answers. And we just wanted you to see this as another opportunity for our students in utilizing AI.
And my son Imran here to try out some of their new technology. And so we're curious about how good it might be at tutoring someone in math on Khan Academy. So let's get it started. It's loading up. All right, make sure I can see our screen.
Actually, in this form.
Hello there. Yeah. I'm here with my son, and I'd love you to tutor him on this math problem. But don't give him the answer. You can ask questions and nudge him in the right direction, but I really want to make sure he understands it himself. And he's here in the room, so you can talk to him directly.
Of course, I'd be happy to help. Let's look at the problem together. Can you first identify which sides of the triangle are the opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse relative to angle alpha?
All right, so I'm pretty sure this is the angle alpha right here, right?
Perfect. That's correct. Now, looking at the triangle, which side do you think is the hypotenuse?
Really,
Hypotenuse?
I'm not totally sure. I think it might be this one, but I really am not sure. This side AC?
You're close. Actually, side AC is called the adjacent side to the angle alpha. The hypotenuse is the longest side of a right triangle and is directly opposite the right angle. Can you find which one is the hypotenuse?
Oh, okay, I see. So I think the hypotenuse is this really long side from A to B. Would that be correct?
Exactly. Well done. Now that you've identified the hypotenuse, can you identify which side is the opposite side to angle alpha?
Okay, well, I mean, you told me earlier that this was the adjacent side, and I know that's the hypotenuse, so I'm guessing that this side, BC, is the opposite side.
Great deduction. That's absolutely correct. Now that you've identified all the sides relative to angle alpha, do you remember the formula for finding the sine of an angle in a right triangle?
Yeah, I know that the sine is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse.
Perfect. That's absolutely right. Now, can you apply that formula to find sine alpha in a triangle using the lengths of the sides that we've identified?
Okay, so, I mean, you told me that 7, this side BC, is the opposite side. And then you said that the hypotenuse is the longest side, so that would be this side 8B, which is 25. So would the answer be 7 over 25?
Excellent work. That's correct. Sine alpha equals 7 over 25. You did a great job identifying the sides and using the sine formula. If you have any more questions, feel free to ask.
So as we think about the potential as we think about the potential of artificial intelligence, again, if we go back to the conversation of replacing people, we're absolutely not going to replace teachers, but it allows teachers to be able to focus on specific student needs. Deputy Superintendent Romero and I were talking about how this might be implemented. And I was sharing that if students were using something like this in centers and the teacher was then rotating around and providing assistance where specific assistance could be needed. The other thing that you could do is group students based on their current learning level with specific groups or with specific problems.
And before we open up for questions, Dr. Weaver, I just want to, make note for you guys. This was something that I've talked to you guys about when I was first hired, and something we've worked hard on is working together as one. As you can see, two different departments working together to provide high-quality instruction and support for our classrooms. So I want to thank both Dr. Weaver and Deputy Superintendent Romero for really breaking through the walls and working together as one to provide high quality and better instruction for our students and support.
Dr. Gonzalez.
I really appreciate this. It looks like you've done lots of hard work in getting this together. We still have to teach students how to use it, because that's what the purpose of schooling is, to teach them how to get into their future. So I appreciate this very much.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to mention that as you say, teach students how to use this, what I think about is really teaching. To me, it's about digital citizenship. So it's about the effective use of this. One of the things that we were able to do this year is ensure that every school from grades K through 6 has a technology teacher in that school, and digital citizenship is absolutely a core part of that instruction, and I believe that that will pay dividends years and years to come.
Go ahead, Board Member Bose. Thank you, Vice President Noble. This was wildly interesting. I learned so much and feel very excited and much less, apprehensive than I did before. So, thank you. I thought it was interesting. There were just a couple notes that I took. On page 6, where we were talking about shifting the work of employees, how that seems to have a much stronger emphasis on the soft skills and how downplayed those have traditionally been. And I think that's pretty interesting to think about that from an education standpoint and preparing students for the workforce. My note on Amira is yay, because anything that can help kids learn to love to read, I think, is just so important. And then my one and only question is around, these scales. Is there specifically, I guess, on the no AI use, are there tools, or is there like a formulaic way that teachers verify that that is in fact the case? Because I've heard some sort of mixed reports. Oh, the teacher says he can tell if you've used AI and you'll get a 0, period. So I'm just curious what the training is like for educators and what tools they have in order to verify that in fact no AI has been used.
I'll let Dr. Weaver answer, or Mr. Lewis, but great question, because we asked the same question in our training and saw some apps to really help them.
Yeah.
So great question, and we have products in place that help us identify plagiarism, and those tools are advancing and already include AI detection.
Well, and I think that what we come back to is good teaching is good teaching is good teaching. And we work at teaching teachers how to use the tools that we have in our district. And so I know what you're talking about. You have to know the voice of your students. And so I, as a teacher, feel like I know the voice of every student I have, but the system just told me that it's not their voice, right? So we have to work to figure out, why is that system telling us that? And then what can we do with the teacher and the student, like you said, digital citizenship, to make sure that we're looking at what's going on with that system. So it still requires a human to intervene and figure out how that tool is being used.
Yeah, perfect, thank you. And then my last note that I didn't write down was that this reminds me, so, you know, I grew up in the land of dinosaurs when there weren't computers in our pockets, but like in college, we had to learn how to search things in the, you know, in the databases at the university because we didn't have computers in our apartments. And we have to learn how to search things on Google, like what words do you type in to get the information back that you want? And so in a large part, it feels a lot like learning how to use that maybe much broader and vaster tool. But maybe not all that different than what we've been doing with search engines for the last 20 years, 25. I'll take it.
I read an article recently about AI being used to apply for colleges, for their essays. And they did an experiment. They did AI essays and regular essays. And the AI essays were very dry. And they could tell immediately that it was AI. So there's work to do.
Well, and just to add to that, and I think we did mention it, a great tool, AI tool is a thought partner, right? There are many times that we've used AI already that still have to go through the editing process through a human. So for us, we're using it as a foundational start to anything, but still having to go through an editing process with a human.
And that's what I do too. I've used it, so I'm just playing around. But you do have to edit it. Make it relevant.
Board Member Heffernan.
Thank you. I would like, as the superintendent and deputy superintendent know, I have completely read and tried to memorize Mr. Kahn's book, Brave New Words, which is completely about what you've presented here. And I would like to applaud that presentation you've given to us to how to use this. And also, Deputy Superintendent Romero, because as you know, I think using the Khan Academy new tutoring program that has been developed, that was demonstrated in the video, if we can start using that at some level, even as pilot programs in schools, are we going to be able to do that anytime soon? Or is it already in place?
So the specific example that was provided will only work on a mobile device,
Okay.
which does not include our Chromebooks at this moment. But as you know, the tools that were available just 6 months ago that were on the paid version of ChatGPT and the other GPT tools are now becoming free versions. So we believe that that iteration of technology, the development of technology, will come more quickly than we can adapt as a district. I don't think it will be a matter of will the tools be available. I think it will be a matter of how quickly can the district scale. Can we get our teachers to understand the tools and our students to understand the tools and how to use them in an effective manner.
And back to the other point, you're talking about tutoring and personalized learning on page 10. What the cohort of schools, are we talking about, what schools in our district are we referring to?
So I'll let Mr. Lewis answer about that. I want to make sure that we understand that we do have a pilot program for teachers, but we are not asking other teachers to not use ChatGPT. Artificial intelligence.
Right.
There are teachers who have been using it for a couple of years now,
Yes.
and we're not trying to ask them to stop their use. We are just trying to get feedback specific to this tool for the district.
So the pilot that will be rolling out this Saturday we opened it up to every secondary school in our district. And so it's a combination of teachers. They were volunteers who came forth and said, we want to participate in doing this. Because it takes, we're putting 20 hours in front of them that they're committing to that. So it's a large commitment on their behalf. And so they're coming together with us this Saturday. And this is a product that's similar to Khan in that we are going to create the tutors as well. Only the tutors will be created, where we'll teach the teachers how to create these tutors so that they can implement this tutoring system within their classrooms. For our pilot, we are piloting with the 12 teachers, and we have 1,000 licenses that we'll use between now and December. So that means students will be participating as well.
All right.
It was very important for us, as we looked at the products that are available out there, to have a very safe space for our students. And so that's why we're using Chat for Schools, because it is a safe space for students. We can see what is being communicated with the artificial intelligence. We can see what's coming back, the output. And so it's very important for us to make sure that we know what the communication is that's going back and forth, whether it be after school or whether it be during school. So that's why we're piloting with Chat for Schools to start with.
And will these teachers who are building the tutors, are they possibly collaborating? In other words, would you have 3 Algebra 1 teachers or 2 History of New Mexico teachers? How does that work?
Again, we opened it up as an invitation, and for the pilot to start with, for the fall semester, we have quite the mix. We have a group of math teachers at the high school level. We have a group of science teachers. We have specials type teachers, elective type teachers, and so it's a mix of teachers throughout the district, which is really good because it gives us a good window into what's happening across the board in our district. And so, again, we'll meet with them on Saturday, and we're going to have a great time with them introducing this tool, but also getting to know them and getting to know their schools, because that'll come out with it as we meet with them on Saturday as well.
Right. Thank you very much. Thanks.
So I guess I'd say, like my colleagues on the board, this fills me with joy and learning, and I appreciate a lot of the things that we covered here. It strikes me this is very thorough and responsible, things like fact-checking and guidance to guide instruction. I guess I would say 2 primary things. One is, and Dr. Weaver said, how we can scale. And so that's sort of what I've been thinking about, because I think Board Member Bose is right. This maybe on some level isn't that different from other things, and having read about this, but it's sort of faster is what we keep hearing, is that the scale of how things are moving is faster because it's kind of generative in itself. And so I love the roadmap and would say that as much as we can use the students, because they will be better at this almost by definition than those of us that are older. So in the pilots and to use them as part of our adoption brain trust is something that I would really love to see. I also happened to attend I chose very deliberately to attend a session on this at the National School Boards Conference in New Orleans. And they talked about prompt engineering and what those jobs will pay. So just looking at and practicing with what prompt engineering would be. And I think that on some level, and I think there's a very good framework here, and so I don't feel uncomfortable, not surprisingly, that this is very well done and informed by national models. But what I see is tentacles everywhere. And so we've been talking about students and teachers a lot. That's appropriate. So, I'm going to focus some of what I say a little bit in other places, because I think this goes everywhere, and I think that the students, again, as part of the brain trust, is how we iterate, can be very important. But for example, I mean, we have the example of the professional development training research. In the session that I went to, they talked a lot about film and media, which is a subject close to my heart. And I found myself thinking, Joe, you can search all of the, free for use music that is not annoying, or something like that. And it talked about how this is foundationally changing film and media, because with prompt engineering, you don't even have to make things in the way that you and I have done many times before. And so that in a particular subject, right, has profound implications. AI will change how we do communications and film and music selection and all of that. So in every subject, it will be there. And then so, again, I'm very pleased to hear, I forget what you called it, but it was like a teacher, a digital teacher at each school to be there and to help teachers integrate and think about in the particular subject matter, because man, this will be a thing. It'll be a thing in film and media. It'll be a thing in journalism. It'll be a thing in, and the curricula that we might want to think about, or classes in using AI, doing prompt engineering, that sort of thing. I think that comes at some point soon, but again, how we can use our students both in the classroom and in clubs and, all of this. I do think there's a big sort of structural piece that needs to stay structured, intentional, checked, and organic, because it needs to be responsive to what's going to be happening. But the other piece, and this was the example, and I just want to underline it because I'm increasingly, and some of us that have this lens, are obsessed with the administrative efficiencies that this can bring. And we have these incredibly cumbersome, well, I don't know if that's the right word, well, it's a word, processes, whether it's in hiring and verifying teacher credentials in HR, in background checking, in, honestly, I'm frustrated. Why do I have to fill out the same damn information every year for my kid, no matter what? And do you really want my insurance company's phone number? Like, seriously? Is anybody ever going to use that? Anyway, but the efficiencies in administration, there's a working theory. I think that this could be profoundly impactful for making public systems better, because of the efficiencies it can bring of all the boring stuff that's done by humans. And then, in theory, again, our transfer process or things like that, and to have better attention on customer service so that people know what's going on when they apply for a job, apply for a transfer, all of the things that we have these massive interactions with groups of people, that this has the potential to improve. I think it's appropriate that there's a lot of focus on students and teachers and the education that we do, but I hope that there's, and it sounds like there is, and again, a very good framework here, but some brain power left over from you all to think about the administrative improvements we can get, and to actively be in there as the certified AI strategist that you are now, using the students to help us see the blind spots and the future, even better than we may be able to ourselves.
And to your 2 points, one thing that we did agree to during our session is that we're going to be behind the students. The students are going to be ahead of us along the way. We're just going to try to catch them. So to your point, involving students is going to be key. Also, on your second point, when it comes to processes, admin work, and some of the things that go into it, we've talked with Dr. Weaver and the national group that he works with, and I was blown away because, to your point, and we haven't got to that, and that wasn't in the presentation, but something we're discussing. You can input spreadsheets, you can input travel receipts, and it will fill out your reimbursements for you. So maybe talk just briefly on that, and I remember that conversation very clearly at Tomasitas.
Yeah, great point. So Superintendent Chavez and Board Member Noble, you talked about foundational change and administrative efficiencies. And I see that foundational change will become something that we're seeing in education. So something that was fun about the 2 days with Cabinet is that almost every Cabinet member and instructional Cabinet member came up to me within the next couple of days and my team and said, I tried this. And can you believe what it did? I was able to do this, quick little things. And it's through that practice that people start thinking, like it starts to click in your brain and you think about what's that next step. Something that I have done is I've created my own Chat GPT that focuses on my work and my department. I've uploaded the documents. I've uploaded our core mission, our values, our vision for the technology department. I've uploaded our standard procedures. I've uploaded all of our, I'm losing my word here, our job descriptions, and all of those different types of things. And I can go in, and if I'm having a specific problem, I can ask my version of ChatGPT, and it will spit out an answer that looks at best practice nationally, but also looks at what we're doing here in Santa Fe Public Schools. And it's been amazing because it makes recommendations that might say, well, this is what we're seeing on a national level. Here's what you're doing. You might want to consider rethinking what you're doing because it doesn't quite match up. And a lot of times I look at it and I think, well, wow, that's a great idea. What that makes me think about is how can our students then start to apply this type of learning? So if we could have a student, let's say in 6th grade, who is able to put in learning reflections into their own instance of GPT that can then start to accumulate all of those things. And then after a year, I could ask, can you summarize my learning for the year? And we would be able to then, it's still my learning, but GPT is just, again, that thought partner helping us accumulate all of these things and helping us present them in a more meaningful manner. And so these are just some of the exciting things. When you said foundational change, like I'm really thinking about, I know you were talking about administrative, and I did bring those up a little bit. One of the first things I did that Superintendent Chavez talked about was I came back from a travel meeting and was required to put in flight receipts, meal receipts, all of those things. So I photocopied my receipts all onto 2 pages, and then I uploaded the Excel template that I was supposed to put it in, and I asked ChatGPT to tell me where I should put what. And I expected it to say, okay, you have $40 worth of meals, put those in the meals. It pre-filled the form for me, and it added them up. Now, it took me 25 minutes to do it the first time, but I think about how we might be able, as an organization, to be able to quickly create a tool that would do that for everybody to help with those administrative tasks that are a little more daunting.
To give another, there we go. And one other example that I want to share with you, we have some outdated job descriptions. And so we uploaded older job descriptions into one of these chat platforms, and it updated for us. Of course, we have to go back in and really fine tooth, the job description, make some edits here and there. But I've been very impressed with the tools that we have on hand, and thank you guys, but also how we can leverage it to be more efficient moving forward. So some of these little jobs and assignments that nobody wants to take on, or it just takes up time, have been, as Dr. Weaver has said, samples that we're presenting to you and talking to you about tonight, because it's really helped, really, as you saw in that one with HR and the required trainings, provide clear, very clear guidance with accurate references.
Thank you. And how we think about this and frankly, manage the scaling and make sure that there's supporting and vetting. I mean, there's immense, as we've heard, obviously, time-saving capabilities, even productivity. And again, I go to sort of Joe's world that, you know, if he gets really good at prompts and whatnot, who knows? You still want to film interviews with people to get the real testimonies, but I don't know if you have to edit anymore and this sort of thing. And thinking about how we make sure that there is, I mean, there's a very good framework here, but that exists at scale to some extent is, I think, probably not an easy task, but it's very exciting, and there's so much potential in what we can do and the efficiencies that can be had there. So thank you very much. This is incredible.
If I could say one more thing also about going back to the Khan Academy approach, one of the things I so enjoyed about what I learned from that book as well is watching the videos also outside of here. If you have a first grade student who's reading at a nursery school level, the Khan tutor deals with that student in an emotional, empathetic way, as opposed to making that child feel guilty or ashamed in any way. There are no negative connotations given back to that student, and I thought, from our point of view, that's a remarkable thing to encourage them, the well-being and the mental health of that child to want to learn, as opposed to denigrating the child. Thanks.
I don't know when our next ETN is, but there's a lot here we'll need to talk about in that regard.
Absolutely. And just, again, before we move on, I want to thank Deputy Superintendent Romero and Dr. Weaver. Again, you can see the collaboration between two departments and what it's producing. So they're doing a great job of working together to provide support and high-quality tools.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to our action items. We have our consent agenda. I would ask that we vote on items 1 through 4, unless there's anything else anyone wants to vote on separately, so that I can abstain from the minutes for the September 12th meeting. I was not here.
Madam Vice President?
Yes?
I move to approve the consent agenda, items 1 through 4.
I second.
Excellent. Thank you, Board Member Heffron. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, items 1 through 4, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or otherwise? Okay, we have approved those. We're now on to consent agenda item number 5, the minutes from September 12th.
I move to approve the minutes from September 12th.
Thank you, Board Member Bozay.
I second.
Thank you, Board Member Heffron. All those in favor of approving the minutes from September 12th, please say aye.
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 And I abstain from that vote. Okay, we have approved that. Moving on to advanced planning. Superintendent, anything to change?
No, nothing to change. Just want to make note that potentially on October 10th, we may have a student data report for you guys, presentation on student outcomes. As you've seen the release earlier this week, you know, there's a lot of great things to celebrate, but there's still some progress to be made. And then also a potential resolution coming from the reimagining work. So again, it's going to be a great meeting, the first one in October.
Marvelous. Anything else on advanced planning?
Can I ask a question? Sorry.
Of course.
What does it exit meeting mean on the 11th, November 7th? What does that mean, exit meeting?
So at the audit committee, 2 of our most important meetings of the year are the entrance meeting, which is when they talk about the process for the audit, for the annual audit, and then the exit meeting when the audit is sort of finalized. So ultimately, that's our exit conference where they will take us through the audit, I believe. But ultimately, it's the key point in the business of the audit.
Thank you, Vice President.
Yeah. All right, anything else for the good of the order? Okay, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you very much. We'll be back in October.